So I just got home from a long day at work, and I'm in the mood to make some Suurlemoen Mampoer. So last week we made the gin from our bird watchers. This week we are making the wash for our Suurlemoen Mampoer, or as our American friends call it, our lemon brandy. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm just going to get into something less formal and we will get to brewing. Okay, so welcome back, guys. As I said in the car, we are making a Suurlemoen Mampoer, or a lemon brandy, as our American friends will call it. So before we get stuck into making this, just a little bit of the legality around distilling and that type of stuff for the guys that are in South Africa. It is legal to distill your own liquor in South Africa. It is, however, necessary for you to register your still and register yourself. It is not a very complicated process. Head down to your nearest SARS branch, or if you have a VAT or tax consultant, phone them up and ask them to assist you with the process. It's a few documents to fill in, it's a few photos to take, and then you can get registered as your own distiller for own use. Okay, so to keep the distilling community of South Africa alive and thriving, please get your still registered, please get your still and yourself registered with SARS. Okay, it's not going to cost you anything, so just get it done and make sure that we can enjoy this hobby for a long time to come. Cool. So with that out of the way, guys, let's get into making our Suurlemoen Mampoer. So Suurlemoen Mampoer is probably one of the most popular Mampoers out there. So everybody that starts out distilling in South Africa will probably end up at one point or another making Suurlemoen Mampoer. So it is a very simple recipe, and it is a really simple one to distill as well. I'll give a couple of hints and tips that I do to give a little bit of extra flavor, but at the end of the day, it is as basic as taking lemons, sugar and yeast, mixing it all together, and then you have your wash that goes into your fermenter, that gets fermented out and then get distilled. So here's my recipe. I'll be using some lemons. So these are nice thick skin lemons. I will also be adding the juice of a couple of oranges. For the exact recipe, guys, head down into the description. I'm making 20-liter batches. So and then we will need sugar. So I'm once again aiming for about 11% alcohol once it's all fermented out. So I'm going for about 4 kilograms of sugar going into 20 liters of water. Then we will need some yeast. I will be using 1 packet of brewer's yeast and 1 packet of bread yeast. The reason for the two different types of yeast is your bread yeast actually acts up quickly and it works out quick, and then your brewer's yeast will then go and take that alcohol to a whole new level. So I add 2. If you can't find brewer's yeast, just use 2 packets of your normal dry yeast, or 3 packets of your normal bread yeast. It will work fine. So let's go over. Oh, and then we're also adding, I'm adding 5 gummy bears. So these are those multivitamins for the kids. I'm adding 5 of those ones into the brew as well, as a little bit of a yeast nutrient. So when my yeast kicks off, it has a lot of flavor to eat, or a lot of nutrients to eat, and just gets the fermentation going quickly. Cool. So let's get into it. First up, I'm going to get my yeast to start up. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of sugar. Into a jar of water. So this is just normal distilled water, not distilled water, normal clean water. Give it a quick shake up so the sugar just starts dissolving, and then we're going to add our yeast. So as always, make sure everything is nice and clean and sterilized, guys. It's not as important when we make the beer to get everything sterilized, but it's still relatively important. So you want to control everything that goes into your fermentation, so make sure everything is nice and clean. and sterilize. Cool. So with the yeast now going, we're going to put that off to one side, allow it to get rehydrated. Now it's into peeling and juicing our lemons. Okay, so my first tip is when you take your lemons and your oranges, save the peel. So I've already done 2 here. Reason why we're going to save the peel is we are going to be using it when we distill. So we're going to add it to our column or our gin basket or our thumper, and we are going to distill through it, and that's going to impart some lovely citrus flavors into our finished product. So just take a normal peeler, run it over the fruit, get as little as possible of the white stuff, the rind, because that's going to add some bitterness to your product that you don't want. So yeah, just get the peel off. Okay, so with all the skins removed and having as little as possible of the white on it, I'm going to leave this out. I'm going to put it into a one of those convection ovens just to dry out a bit quicker. But if you don't have one of those, put it in the oven on a low setting on a baking tray. Just allow most of the liquid to evaporate off. Otherwise, what you can do is spread this out on a newspaper and then leave it to dry out over the next couple of days while your wash is fermenting out. So yeah, don't add this to your wash, guys. This is going to impart a lot of oils into your wash, and it is going to make your distillate very cloudy, and you're not going to get the flavor you want. So cloudy distillate is okay if you have a lot of flavor in it, but if you don't have a lot of flavor and it's cloudy, then you're doing something wrong. Cool, so we're going to set this aside. Next up, we're going to take all these lemons and some of the oranges and we're going to juice them up. Okay, so guys, why the lemon and the orange at the same time? The lemon has a lot of sour notes to it. As we know, it's a lemon, but the orange will add a little bit of sweetness back into it, and orange also has a great citrus flavor that doesn't overpower the whole wash. So the orange will just add a little bit of extra depth of flavor into the distillate. That's why we're keeping the orange skin as well. Okay guys, so with all the oranges and lemons all peeled, as much as that rind removed as possible, I'm going to blend mine up. You can pulp it whatever way you want to. I'm just going to blend it up and then I'm going to sieve it through to remove any of the pips or whatever that I can, or as much as the pips as possible as I can, because the pips, once again, if they're in the fermentation, they add a very bitter note to it. And one of the big things about when you're doing your Mampoer run or your fruit brandy runs is that your low wines at the end, or not your low wines, your tails at the end, sometimes have some great flavors in them. And if you leave the pips or the rind in there, the bitterness is going to overpower that flavor that you might just get out of the tails. So try and remove as much as that of that white stuff as possible, and as many of the pips as possible before you add it into your fermenter. Cool, let's get it all blended up. much as possible of the pulp removed, and any other things that I can with the sieve. Yes, some of it will pass through, but that will settle down out when we add our bentonite or our gelatin or whatever we're going to use to clarify this with. It's amazing how a little bit of orange added to this lemon will break that bad sour taste. So we have the overwhelming smell of lemon in here, but the orange has taken away that very sour bite. Okay, so yeah, next up what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissolve the sugars in our hot water as much as possible, and then it's time to start adding everything into the fermenter. Just to show you guys, our yeast has kicked off quite a lot. As you can see, this yeast is nice and active. There's already a nice head on there. I'm just going to stir it down so that head doesn't boil over. Okay, so as I said, time to start dissolving the sugar in our water and then mixing it all into our fermenting chamber. So let's go get mixing. Okay, so I'm just going to rinse my fermenting chamber. I know they say don't fear the foam, but yeah, I just always play it on the cautious side. I'm just going to give it one last rinse and then start adding everything into the ferment chamber. Okay guys, so now it's just combining everything into our jar, adding hot and cold water along the way to ensure that we get that temperature to the point we want it before we pitch our yeast. Remember to leave headroom for your yeast if you're using containers like mine that is close to the right size. So make sure that you leave a little bit of headroom as well for that fermentation to kick off on. So let's start adding everything into the chamber. Okay, so just time to add our multivitamins. I'm just going to drop these babies straight in. They'll get mixed up as I mix it up. Okay, so now it's time to add my orange lemon juice into here. Guys, please take a look at this. This is not just your standard lemon juice or orange juice that you get from a jar or something like that. Yes, that will work, but this just gives awesome flavor if you use the fresh stuff. So this is thick and soupy because of all that pulp and everything that we've mixed in there and we've blended it up. So this is nice and thick and soupy, so there's a lot of flavor in there. It's not just squeezed orange or squeezed lemon juice. Okay, and for those that are wondering, that's roughly about 2 liters of lemon juice, lemon/orange juice that I've added into this mixture here now. Okay, so next up, the hot water goes in first. We're going to fill it up with the hot water from the pot, and then we're going to start adding that other water in, hot and cold water, up until we end up with our temperature that we're looking for. Guys, remember to pour it from a height. You want to incorporate as much oxygen into this as possible. Mixing it, pouring it, whatever. Up until the point before you pitch your yeast, you want as much oxygen in as possible. So pour it from a nice high height, get it to slosh around and get as much oxygen in there as possible. Okay, so for sure one of my favorite ingredients to add or additives to add is a bit of Epsom salts. So I'm just going to do 1 heaped teaspoon of Epsom salts into the mix. That's just going to condition the water and stabilize everything inside there. The yeast also loves Epsom salt, so we're going to have a good healthy fermentation. Let's mix some more. Okay, so it looks like all the sugars have been dissolved on the inside here. Just a quick test of the tin to see if it's ready to get the yeast in there. And then, yeah, we can cap this baby off. I'm going to be using my fish tank heater to keep the temperature consistent. So yeah, let's just test the temp quickly. So we are smack dab on 24 degrees centigrade. So that's nice and low. We can pitch our yeast. The water that the yeast is in currently is about 20 degrees. So we won't shock the yeast too much when we put it in. And yeah, like I said, I'm aiming for about 11% when this thing is all firmed out. So with about 4 kilograms of sugar, that's going to give me a specific gravity or a starting gravity of roughly 1066. 20 liters of water. Then by adding the lemon and the orange in there, that's about 2 liters of that juice. That's another, let's say 500 grams of sugar. So that will bring us up to about 1070. And yeah, all that firmed out to roughly about 11%. So it might be over, might be under. Because we're going to run this through the still, it's not necessary to be very specific. If we were making beer, we would be chasing that specific gravities all the way through the process. So for this, we're just aiming for a high ABV when we're done fermenting, so we can get as much product out of this as possible. So yeah, let's get our yeast added to this, let's get our egg lock on, and then let's see what we have in a couple of days. Thank you guys very much for joining me. Have an awesome day. And as always, remember, like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram if you want to see how this baby carries on throughout the week. Cool.